I was abandoned at 14. When Dad remarried, we don't have room for you anymore. They changed the locks. 7 years later, Dad called crying, Son, I need your help. I've waited 7 years to write this. 7 years of planning, documenting, and building myself up from absolute zero while watching the man who was supposed to protect me spiral down into the mess he created. Karma doesn't always come naturally. Sometimes you have to help it along. This started back when I was 14. My mom died when I was 8. Cancer. And for a while, it was just me and my dad Barrett trying to figure life out. And honestly, for those first few years, he tried. Not saying he was perfect, but he was there. Made my lunches, came to my games when he could, helped with homework, the normal dad stuff. Then when I was 13, he met Alicia at some work thing, and man, the change was like someone flipped a switch. At first it seemed cool. Dad was happier, started coming home with actual groceries instead of gas station dinners. He even got a haircut that didn't look like he did it himself in the bathroom mirror. But looking back, I should have seen the warning signs, the way he'd check his texts under the table, how he started criticizing little things about me that never bothered him before. My room was suddenly a disaster, even though nothing had changed. My music was too loud, even with headphones on. 3 months after they met, Alicia was sleeping over. A month after that, we were having family dinners with her kids, Brianna, 16, and Sutton, 12. By summer, Dad was telling me they were moving in, and wasn't that great news? I'd have siblings, one big happy family. Except it wasn't my family anymore. Our 3-bedroom house suddenly felt crowded. I got pushed out of my room because Brianna needs her own space as a teenage girl and had to sleep on a futon in the basement. My stuff kept disappearing or getting moved. Photos of my mom that used to be in the living room were now in a box in the closet. Alicia redecorated everything in this generic beige home goods style that looked like a lame Instagram feed. The first time I realized how bad it was getting was when Alicia accidentally donated my PlayStation, the one my mom got me before she died. When I freaked out, Dad told me to grow up. It was just a game system, and we could get a new one someday. We never did. My stuff kept shrinking. My space kept shrinking. My existence kept shrinking. The real breaking point came after school one Thursday in October. It had been raining all day, and I was soaked walking home from the bus stop. Normal day, failed a math quiz, had some drama with friends on Discord. Nothing special. I just wanted to change into dry clothes and zone out for a while. I put my key in the lock. It didn't work. Tried again. Nothing. I texted Dad. No answer. Called him. Straight to voicemail. I sat on the porch for 2 hours in wet clothes. The neighbors probably thought I was some loser who got locked out. Truth was much worse. When Dad's car finally pulled up, Alicia was driving. She didn't even look surprised to see me sitting there. She just looked annoyed, like I was a package delivered to the wrong address. Dad got out and didn't make eye contact. He told me we needed to talk. That's when I saw the trash bags in the back of the car. 3 of them. Turned out those bags were everything I owned, packed up while I was at school. He said they'd been thinking about the living situation, that it wasn't working with all of us in the house, that Sutton needed the basement as a game room since he was getting older, that they'd talked to my Aunt Rhonda, Mom's sister, and she agreed to let me stay with her, not asked if I wanted to, told me I was moving. Today, right now. I stood there getting rained on again as my dad told me I wasn't welcome in my own home anymore, that there wasn't room for me, that Alicia's kids needed the space more than I did. My mom had been dead for 6 years, and now it was like they were trying to erase any evidence she ever existed, including me. Aunt Rhonda lives 45 minutes away. I'd have to change schools, leave my few friends, start over. When I pointed this out, Dad just shrugged and said I'd adjust. Kids are resilient, right? I'm not gonna lie. I cried in Aunt Rhonda's guest room that night. Hard. The kind of crying where you feel like you might puke. The kind where your whole body hurts after. But something changed inside me when I finally stopped. It was like all that sadness burned away and left something harder behind. The next day, I skipped school, went to the library instead. use their computers to research some things, like how child abandonment works legally, like what happens to survivor benefits when a parent dies, like whether my dad could just decide he didn't want me anymore. Turns out, he couldn't, legally, anyway, but he did, and no one was going to do anything about it. Aunt Rhonda was nice enough, but had her own problems, working 2 jobs, small apartment, no extra money, no energy to fight my dad in court, no time to get involved with child services. I learned pretty quick that nobody was coming to save me. Systems too overloaded for a kid who has a roof over his head and food to eat. Doesn't matter if your heart's been ripped out of your chest. The real knife twist came when I overheard Aunt Rhonda on the phone with Dad a week later. She was asking him about child support, about helping with food and clothes. His answer must have been no because she just kept saying, "But Barrett, he's your son," over and over. After that call, I did some more research. Found out Dad was still collecting my mom's Social Security survivor benefits that were meant for my care. About $1,200 a month. Money that was supposed to be for me, for my future, for my need. He was pocketing it while I slept on a second-hand mattress at Aunt Rhonda's. The next few months were a blur. Dad stopped answering my texts completely. No birthday card when I turned 15. No calls to check how I was doing. Nothing at Christmas except a $50 Walmart gift card that Alicia probably bought. I was officially erased, but I didn't disappear. I got focused. I started documenting everything, keeping records, screenshots of unanswered texts, dates of missed child support, records of the benefits he was still collecting, names of his friends, his boss, his colleagues, anything that might be useful someday. Aunt Rhonda didn't have much, but she taught me something valuable: how to be patient, how to work the long game, how to survive when life kicks you in the teeth. I got a weekend job at the mall. Started putting aside money in an account Aunt Rhonda helped me open. Kept my grades decent enough. Made a few new friends, but never got too close to anyone. Hard to trust people when your own father throws you away like yesterday's trash. Every night before I fell asleep, I'd update my record, add another day to the tally, another payment he missed, another text he ignored. Every entry was another brick in the wall I was building, the wall that would eventually fall right on top of him. Some people might say holding on to anger for years isn't healthy, that forgiveness sets you free. That's bullshit, people say, when they've never been betrayed by the one person who was supposed to love you unconditionally. Forgiveness is overrated. Justice isn't. By the time I was 17, I had a plan, a long-term, detailed plan that would take years to fully execute. I wasn't just going to succeed despite my father. I was going to make sure he regretted every single day he chose Alicia and her kids over his own flesh and blood. I started small. Research on social media showed me he was doing well. Promotion at work. Family vacations with his real family. New car. Meanwhile, Aunt Rhonda was picking up extra shifts to help buy my school supplies. The contrast fueled me, made me work harder, made me focus. When I look back at that day in the rain, I don't see a victim anymore. I see the beginning of something my father never anticipated. He thought he was getting rid of a burden. Instead, he created his own personal nightmare. The chess pieces are all in position now. 7 years of careful planning, 7 years of watching and waiting, 7 years of building myself up while tracking his every mistake. And then yesterday, my phone rang with his number for the first time in 5 years. I answered with a smile on my face as he started sobbing about how everything had fallen apart, how he needed my help, how he had nowhere else to turn. Karma had finally gotten my message, and I was just getting started. Update. First off, thanks for all the support on my first post. Some of you asked if I'd actually gotten therapy during all this. LOL. Therapy costs money. And money was exactly what I didn't have after Dad decided I wasn't worth keeping around anymore. Anyway, picking up where I left off. Living with Aunt Rhonda wasn't easy, but it taught me what actually matters. Her apartment was small. The hot water ran out after 5 minutes, and we ate a lot of ramen. But unlike my dad, she never made me feel like I was taking up too much space. The first 6 months were rough. New school, no friends, and this constant burning feeling in my chest whenever I thought about Dad and his perfect new family living in my house while I slept on a fold-out in Rhonda's spare room. I'd scroll through their Facebook photos at night, watching them go on vacations I wasn't invited to, Christmas morning posts with presents under the tree, Brianna's sweet 16 party in our backyard. It was like watching some alternate reality version of my life where I'd been erased. The worst part? Dad's social media was full of family man BS. Profile pic of him coaching Sutton's soccer team. #blessed#family, first crap on every post. Meanwhile, I hadn't heard from him in months. Aunt Rhonda tried to reach out to him a few times about child support. He'd either ghost her or promise to figure something out soon, which never happened. The Social Security checks from my mom? Still going straight into his account. I spent my 15th birthday bussing tables at this local diner that hired me under the table. Came home with sore feet, smelling like grease, but with $80 in my pocket. Aunt Rhonda had made cupcakes. No presents, but I didn't care. That money felt better than any gift Dad could have sent. By 16, I had 2 steady weekend jobs, one at the mall store and another helping this old guy Finley with his handyman business. Finley was gruff but fair, paid me decent, and actually taught me stuff, instead of just working me to death. How to frame a wall, basic electrical, plumbing fixes that save people thousands, real-life skills. I wasn't a natural at first, dropped tools, measured wrong. Normal rookie mistakes. But Finley had this way of correcting without making you feel stupid. Totally opposite of how Dad would get all impatient when I didn't understand something immediately. While working for Finley, I started noticing something. The people who called him were desperate. Their basement was flooding, their roof was leaking, their electricity was out, and they'd pay anything to fix it fast. That's when I started paying real attention to what he was teaching me. Junior year, I took every shop and business class my high school offered, started watching YouTube tutorials on construction basics, got my grades up just enough to look good on applications, not because I cared about school, but because I had a plan forming. Around this time, I also started digging deeper into Dad's life, set up a fake Instagram to follow his colleagues, joined local Facebook groups in his neighborhood. I learned he'd gotten a promotion at work, that they'd renovated the kitchen, that Alicia was now a small business owner selling overpriced leggings to her friends. Their perfect little life pissed me off, but it also gave me information. And information is power. Senior year, something interesting happened. Finley mentioned he was getting older and thinking about slowing down. Too many calls, not enough hours in the day. I suggested maybe he could use a partner instead of just occasional help. He laughed it off at first, but I could tell he was considering it. Meanwhile, I applied for every scholarship I could find, wrote essays about overcoming adversity that made reviewers cry without revealing how much I was still seething inside. I wasn't playing for sympathy, I was playing to win. Got accepted to the state college with a partial scholarship. Not enough to cover everything, but combined with my savings and Aunt Rhonda's help, I could make it work. Chose a major in business management with a minor in construction technology, not because I was passionate about it, but because I knew exactly how I'd use it. College was just a means to an end. I wasn't there for the experience or to find myself. I was there to get credentials that would serve my long-term plan. Joined professional organizations, networked with the right people, made connections in the local business community. That's how I met Kristen, actually. She was in my economics class, smart as hell, and with this no BS attitude I respected. We started studying together, then dating. I didn't tell her everything about my dad at first. Trust issues, obviously, but eventually I did. Instead of the pity I expected, she got angry for me, like legitimately pissed off. Started helping me research legal options. Turned out her mom was a paralegal, and she knew things about family law I hadn't considered. Together, we documented everything: the abandoned child support, the stolen benefits, the complete cutting of contact. Built a case file that would make a lawyer drool. Not that I could afford one, but having the ammunition felt good. By junior year of college, I was managing 3 different study groups and practically running the business club. Not because I cared about the resume padding, but because I was learning how organizations worked, how to identify weaknesses, how to leverage relationships. Summer before senior year, Finley called me with news. He'd been diagnosed with early Parkinson's and needed to scale back. Asked if I was serious about that partnership idea from years ago. Said he had connections, equipment, and a client list, but needed someone with energy to take things to the next level. We worked out a deal where I'd put in sweat equity while finishing school. Aunt Rhonda helped me secure a small loan for the rest. By graduation, I was a part owner of a small but respected local business. That's when I made my first strategic move against Barrett. See, through all my networking, I'd learned that my dad's company was struggling, not failing, but definitely not thriving. Perfect timing for someone to move in on their client base. I didn't go after them directly. Too obvious. Instead, I targeted adjacent markets first, built relationships with suppliers, offered better rates and faster service, slowly expanded until we were naturally competing for the same contracts, all while Barrett had no idea who was behind it. I made sure to hire good people, pay them well, create the kind of workplace my dad's company couldn't match. When employees started jumping ship from his place to mine, it was just business, right? The first time we won a big contract over my dad's company felt better than sex, honestly. I celebrated it by helping Aunt Rhonda pay off her car loan. She tried to refuse, but I insisted, told her it was an investment in the person who invested in me when no one else would. When I was 20, I used my growing income to move us both into a better apartment. Nothing fancy, but with reliable heat, and no upstairs neighbor who sounded like they were bowling at 3 a.m. I paid the entire security deposit without telling her. The look on her face when she realized she'd have her own bathroom for the first time in her life was worth every penny. All this time, I kept tabs on Barrett through social media and mutual connection, watched as things started to get rocky for him. His company lost a big account. Brianna dropped out of college and moved back home. Alicia's leggings business tanked when the parent company got sued for being a pyramid scheme. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered sitting in the rain on that porch, my stuff in garbage bags, his voice telling me there wasn't room for me anymore. That's when I decided to accelerate my plan. At 21, I used my business contacts to buy the mortgage on my dad's house. Not directly, through a property investment group I'd connected with through Kristen's family. They didn't know or care about my personal vendetta. They just saw a solid investment opportunity in a neighborhood with rising value. I also started attending industry events where I knew he'd be present. Never approached him directly. Just made sure he saw me talking with his boss, his colleagues, his clients, planting seeds of doubt and curiosity. The real turning point came when I expanded the business into Barrett's specific niche. I hired away 2 of his best guys by offering better benefits, submitted competing bids on projects I knew his company needed to win, gradually squeezed him from all sides. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Through the local business grapevine, I heard Barrett's company was struggling badly. They'd lost several major contracts. To me, though he didn't know that, the economy was tightening. Layoffs were coming. I made sure Barrett's name was at the top of that list. It wasn't even that difficult. A few conversations with the right people. Some concerns raised about his recent performance. Perfectly normal business discussions that just happened to cost my father his job of 17 years. When I heard the news, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not joy. Just a cold, empty space where those emotions should have been. Like watching a chess piece being removed from the board. That's when I realized how much he'd changed me. How the abandoned 14-year-old who cried himself to sleep had become someone capable of destroying a man's career without blinking. I should have felt bad about that. I didn't. Last month, I closed on my first house. Nothing extravagant, but mine. Paid for with money I earned while he was forgetting I existed. The day I got the keys, I drove past our old house, his house now. Noticed the peeling paint, the cracked driveway, the general air of neglect that comes when money gets tight. I took a picture and added it to my collection. documentation of the slow, inevitable collapse I'd helped engineer. Then yesterday, my phone rang. Unknown number. Almost didn't answer. It was him, Barrett, Dad, voice shaking, saying he needed to talk, that things were bad, that he didn't know who else to turn to. 7 years of silence, and now he needed my help. I agreed to meet him tomorrow at this upscale coffee shop downtown that charges $8 for a latte. The kind of place someone without a job can't really afford. I plan to arrive early, order the most expensive thing on the menu, and watch his face when he realizes exactly who he's asking for help. Sometimes revenge isn't a single moment. It's a carefully constructed series of events that leads to someone having no choice but to face what they've done. And I'm just getting started. Update 2. Damn, I didn't expect this to blow up like it has. Thanks for all the awards and DM. For those asking if this is creative writing, I wish. Would have been a lot easier to just make this shit up than to live it. So, the coffee shop meeting with Barrett. I got there 30 minutes early, ordered the most expensive pour-over they had, and a pastry I didn't even want. Just sat there in the corner booth I'd specifically requested, organizing the folder I'd brought along. Inside was 7 years of receipts, literal and metaphorical. When Barrett walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. The man who abandoned me had aged about 20 years in 7. Gray hair, stooped shoulders, this nervous way of looking around like he was afraid someone would see him there. He hadn't even bothered to shave. Wearing the same North Face jacket he'd had when I still lived with him, now faded and frayed at the cuffs. Watching him scan the room, I felt this weird disconnect, like I was observing some stranger who happened to share DNA with me. Not a father, not even an enemy anymore. Just a pathetic NPC in the game of my life. He didn't spot me at first. I let him flounder for a minute before raising my hand. When our eyes met, his lit up with something like hope. Mine stayed cold. The first thing he did was try to hug me. I just stood there, arms at my sides, until he awkwardly backed off. Then he noticed what I was wearing. A watch worth more than his monthly mortgage payment, and a jacket that cost more than his beater car. I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. The slow realization that I wasn't the desperate kid he'd expected. When the barista came over, he ordered plain black coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu. I added a second pour-over and another pastry to my tab. Told the barista to add an extra shot of espresso to mine. No reason except to show I could afford it. For the first 20 minutes, Barrett just talked. Rambled, really. About losing his job, about Alicia leaving him for her CrossFit coach 3 months ago, about how Brianna moved to Florida with some guy she met on Tinder, and Sutton barely speaks to him anymore, about the mortgage being underwater, about bill collectors calling daily. I just sat there, sipping my coffee, letting him dig the hole deeper. When he finally ran out of steam, he looked at me with these sad puppy eyes and asked if I could help him out, just until he got back on his feet. That's when I slid the folder across the table. Inside was everything. Bank statements showing he'd deposited over $98,000 of my mother's Social Security benefits meant for me. Records of unpaid child support totaling $56,000. Printed screenshots of every unanswered text I'd sent him over the years. Photos of my stuff in garbage bags on the porch that day. And the best part? Paperwork showing that I now owned his mortgage through a property investment group. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might pass out. He started stammering about how he'd always meant to pay me back, how things had been tight with 2 other kids to support, how Alicia had controlled the finances. I cut him off mid-excuse, told him I didn't care about his reason, that this meeting wasn't about helping him. It was about showing him exactly who had the power now. Then I laid out his options. Option 1, I could call in the mortgage, force a sale of the house, and sue him for the unpaid support and benefits. His credit would be destroyed. He'd probably have to declare bankruptcy. Might even face criminal charges for the benefit fraud. His hands were shaking so bad he sloshed coffee onto the paperwork. Option 2, I continued, was that he could sign over his remaining equity in the house to me, plus his car, plus whatever was left in his retirement account after Alicia took her half in the divorce. It wasn't about the money. I made more in a month than he'd have in those accounts. It was about taking everything, just like he'd taken everything from me. I watched years of denial crumble in real time, his face cycling through shock, anger, and finally this empty resignation that was honestly better than any reaction I could have hoped for. He asked in this small voice what would happen to him if he signed everything over. Where was he supposed to live? That's when I slid a second folder across the table. Inside was an application for a position at my company. Entry-level labor, minimum wage, the kind of back-breaking work that leaves you sore for days, the kind of job you can't afford to live on. Also in the folder, a lease agreement for a studio apartment in a building I'd recently acquired. Rent set exactly at 40% of what that minimum wage job would pay him. Just enough to keep him perpetually broke, but not quite homeless. The perfect balance of punishment and dependence. When he asked why I was doing this, I finally let myself feel something. Not satisfaction, not even anger anymore. Just pure, cold clarity. I told him that 14-year-old me had cried for months, wondering that exact same thing. Why would a father throw away his son? Now he got to experience the answer from the other side. Then I did something I hadn't planned. Pulled out my phone and showed him my TikTok account. Not my personal one, the one where I'd been documenting pieces of this story for months. 2 million followers. Comments filled with people who'd been through similar abandonment. People who were invested in seeing how this played out. His face, when he realized his humiliation, was already public. Priceless. He asked if I'd remove the videos if he cooperated. I just laughed. We sat there for another hour while he signed everything, his hand trembling on every signature line, barely asking questions. Just this broken shell of a man accepting his fate. I watched him walk out of that coffee shop looking even older than when he'd arrived. Shoulders completely slumped, head down. The walk of someone whose life had just imploded. But my revenge tour wasn't over. 2 days later, I arranged a meeting with Alicia, not out of any sympathy for her. She was equally responsible for throwing me away, but because using her was the next logical step. We met at the same coffee shop. She looked better than Barrett had. Fresh highlights, designer purse that was probably maxing out her credit cards. Fake smile plastered on her face when she saw me. I cut straight to it. Showed her documentation proving Barrett had hidden assets during their divorce. Showed her proof he'd been planning to leave her before she beat him to it, including emails with a rental agency from 6 months earlier. Showed her evidence he'd been siphoning money from their joint accounts for years. None of it was true. All of it was convincing enough that her fake smile turned into real rage. By the end of our meeting, she was promising to get her lawyer to reopen the divorce proceeding, to go after everything Barrett had left, not knowing that by tomorrow he wouldn't have anything left to take. But I wasn't done yet. I reached out to Brianna and Sutton too, not to harm them. They were just kids caught in their parents' mess, like I had been, but to make sure they knew exactly what had happened to me. The truth their father and mother had probably never told them. Brianna left me on read. Sutton sent back a single message saying he always wondered why I disappeared, and that explained a lot about his dad. 3 weeks after the coffee shop meeting, Barrett started his new job, working for a guy who used to mow our lawn when I still lived at home. The irony wasn't lost on me. He moved into the apartment the same weekend. 1 room, shared bathroom down the hall, noisy neighbors, and a window AC unit that barely worked. The manager, who reports directly to me, made sure to mention the rent would be going up 6% next year. Yesterday, I drove past the old house, our house, my house now technically, though I'll never live there again. The property management company I hired has already started renovations to turn it into a duplex rental. As I sat in my car, looking at the place where I'd once been a kid with a normal life, I waited to feel something. Closure, satisfaction, something. Instead, I just felt tired. Not regretful, don't get me wrong. Barrett deserved everything he got and more, but tired of the energy it took to hate someone for so long. So I did something I hadn't planned. Drove to Aunt Rhonda's new condo that I'd helped her buy. Sat on her balcony, drinking cheap beer like we used to do on her old apartment's fire escape. Told her everything I'd done, all the manipulation, all the revenge. She listened without judgment, then told me the only thing that mattered was what I did next, that I could keep Barrett under my thumb forever, or I could just let go, not forgive. Never that, but let go. This morning I made a decision, told the property manager to offer Barrett a different position, still entry level, but with a realistic path to advancement if he actually works for it. Changed his rent to a fair market rate instead of the inflated one. Not because he deserves mercy, he doesn't, but because I refuse to let his shadow hang over the next 7 years of my life the way it did the last 7. I'm not going to help him beyond that. Won't invite him to my wedding when Kristen and I get married next year. Won't introduce him to his grandchildren if we have them someday. Won't pretend we have any kind of relationship. But I'm done actively trying to destroy him. The universe can handle that job from here. Besides, living well really is the best revenge. And every morning when he wakes up in that shitty apartment, going to that dead-end job, knowing his son owns his house and controls his future, that's a punishment that keeps on giving without me having to lift another finger. Some of you will probably think this ending is anticlimactic, that I should have crushed him completely. Honestly, I crushed him enough. The man I saw in that coffee shop barely exists anymore. The father who threw me away is gone, replaced by a pathetic stranger who will spend the rest of his life knowing exactly what he lost. I don't need his love, don't want his apologies, don't require his suffering to validate my success. I won. Game over.